My name is Tom Abraham. I started Veteran Angels about a year ago. Started a little before that, but we got our 501c3 last year officially. 501c3. I briefly want to welcome you and thank you for coming to this event. All of you are here, I presume, because you support our veterans and they need our help as much as we can give. At this time, I want to call on a West Point classmate of mine, a football teammate of mine, and a class president of mine, and Major General Claire Gill. He's going to take the colors, and then we'll do the pledge of allegiance.
Post the colors.
Please stand.
Please join me in pledging allegiance to this great country of ours. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, General Gill. Thank you, VFW Post 33. Father John Nossel, Marine.
My name is, as he said, John Nossel, and I happen to be here because I am Tom's priest at St. Michael's Orthodox Church in South Greensburg. I thank every single one of you for being here today so I can stand here with you and give thanks to God, and give thanks to each other, and especially give thanks to our servicemen and women who have given in many instances their lives, their healthy bodies, their sound minds, with a prayer that along with that we may all be restored to happy and holy wholeness. And again, thank you. Thanks also for the food we're about to eat and for the fellowship we're sharing. God bless all of you. Amen.
Just a little background on what we're doing here. Sometime earlier this year, we had our first retreat. And our retreats are designed to help veterans who suffer from the trauma of combat. And we do that by having them talk with other veterans who have had trauma and how they've overcome the traumas and have healed. And we are not doctors. We don't use doctors. The veterans get all the help they can get medically from the VA and the private sector, but we are just combat veterans. And I have found in working with wounded warriors for the last 10 years that they just need somebody to talk to, the guys that are having the big problems with PTSD. It starts with depression, it moves to abuse, substance abuse, abuse of family, abuse of children, and it just develops. And it develops into PTSD, and then the ultimate is 22 suicides a day by veterans. And that's not good. So we aim to do whatever we can by providing friendship, comradeship, somebody to talk to, somebody who has lived through it. And I was lucky. I did not have these kinds of problems. But I'll tell you this, anybody who goes to combat comes back changed. It affects everybody, even me. And not, you never know it if you know me, but everybody has something. So our goal is to help these guys to deal with what they're suffering from. We would like to do 1 or 2 of these dinners a year. We call it the Veteran Angels Speaker Series. And we'll do this here. There's some people here from Ohio who would like to do it in Ohio. And I'm willing to go out there and we'll try to put it together. I'll put it together any place in the country. I'm not ready to go international, or I'm not even prepared financially to go national. But you know what? I don't even ask for money. When people know what we're doing, they make donations, and that's appreciated. So anyhow, you're going to hear how I know Dave Carey later, but I connected with him. I've been looking for him for 50 years because we knew each other. And don't laugh. God has given me this mission. He told me what to do. And he's putting everybody I need right in front of me to guide me on this mission. I'm not an evangelist or anything. I'm nothing. I'm just a soldier, old soldier. General MacArthur said old soldiers they don't die, they just fade away. Well, I'm just ready to fade away. But I got this voice one time, and it said, do something for veterans. And then when I was thinking about where the hell is Dave Carey, and I heard this voice. I'm exaggerating. This voice said, Google. So I went to Google. I said, where the hell is Dave Carey? Boom, his picture came up on the screen. So that's how I ended up with my speaker. And I didn't even ask him to come and be a speaker. I just said, hey Dave, come to town sometime, let's get to dinner. I'm looking for you for 50 years. And he under my signature block is my website. He looked at the website, got back to me and said, hey Tom, you're doing something for veterans, I'd like to help. So 2 and 2 comes together. God said, Dave, tell Tom you'll come and speak. So I said, Dave, you want to come and speak? He said, yeah. What I want to do now is introduce a few people who are important to, some are important to everybody, and some are important just to me and to Veteran Angels. First off, a huge thank you for, well, I didn't mention about Ford. I said, I wanted a sponsor so I wouldn't have to pay $3,000 or $4,000 to cover the meals. And I said, I'm going to ask one person, one corporation that I think is good for veterans. And I tried to get a contact locally, and I couldn't get the contact locally. I need to talk to somebody at Ford Motor Company in Detroit. And I just want a name and a number, please. He said, I'll get back to you. The next call I got was from the your neighborhood Ford store in Pittsburgh. We are happy to sponsor your event. And you know what? That made it possible. That really made it possible and took, really gave us a start. And I want to introduce the people from Ford, if I can. Joe Thurby is the please stand, is Joe is, he's the chairman of the neighborhood Ford store, and his wife Karen is here. And then Joey's dad is Mr. Thurby. I'm going to call him Joe. Joe is a veteran. And also in attendance is Paul Busick from Detroit, and Jim, I forget your last name, Jim's from Detroit. We got 2 guys from Detroit. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that you guys got us started. It's really absolutely wonderful.
I don't believe that I can be as good as this film. So, but anyway, I'll share with you what we do at Ford Motor Company and the neighborhood Ford stores. Ford is very involved with the veterans. We have a program at Ford where we, especially on the Memorial Day and July 4th holiday, we will have bonuses that we send out to all the people that serve in the armed forces and that are a veteran as well. Ford also employs a young lady who's, her name's Colonel Vanessa Benson, and we go around and her mission is to recruit people that are coming out of the services, say that they put in their 21 to 22 years, whatever their time has been, and these people are looking for jobs. And as Ford dealers, we have 38,000 technicians a year that are retiring, and we want these veterans to come work at our Ford stores. We know that they're disciplined, we know that they're trained. A lot of them have worked on vehicles, they've worked on airplanes, they're very good at being a technician and mechanical things. So we encourage them and we have jobs waiting for them. But on the other hand, we support at the Pittsburgh Vintage Grand Prix, the Warriors. We have the veterans come there. We try to do everything within our dealerships to promote what we do, to promote and thank the veterans. And as I look around this room, my father's sitting with me, who served in the armed services, and at Ford, we just want to say thank you for what you've done, and we just try to give back. In our local 84 dealer group that I represent, the neighborhood Ford store, we're just proud to be here and proud to be a sponsor. And if there's anything that we can do at a Ford dealership to enhance your life, just stop in. Thank you.
I want to show you a 2-minute film about United Healthcare, and I'm going to, what did I say, Missy? We're going to show the film first, or have you come up first? Let's show the film first, then you come up.
Welcome to Eye on Retirement, highlighting resources for a happier, healthier future. We're talking to veteran angels about their helpful resources. Joining me is Tom Abraham. Tom, what is Veteran Angels?
We're an organization of combat veterans that tries to help other veterans who are suffering from the traumas of combat.
And can you tell me, what are the services that your organization helps with?
Well, we try to give them hope where there is no hope. And we believe that no warrior should ever be left behind, not on the battlefield, not at home. And we hope to be a referral source so that they can get other services that they need.
Wonderful. Last question, Tom. So can you tell me, why is it so important for United Healthcare and Veteran Angels to partner here in the western part of Pennsylvania?
Well, most veterans have go to the VA for care, and many of them get discouraged and don't get the care that they need. And even with private insurance, they're limited geographically. United Healthcare gives them options.
Wonderful. Tom, thanks so much for coming, and thanks so much for joining us as well, and we look forward to learning more. This has been Eye on Retirement. Call 1-800-654-9315.
That was a commercial that United Healthcare did with me, my first TV appearance, I think, except for the time that I tackled Roger Staubach in the Army-Navy game. Remember that, Dave? You were there. That was your senior year. I tackled Roger Staubach. Okay, at this time, I want to introduce Missy Lancaster, who will just say a few words about United Healthcare. Then we'll eat.
Round of applause for organizing all of this tonight. So I'm not going to take up too much time because I know I'm in front of food, right? So we've been waiting for it. But I just really wanted to echo some items that Tom had talked about. First of all, it's about how we can partner together and about your health care, and also how we can give back. And one thing that myself and company have done this year is we have specifically come out with a program, which is our Essentials Plan, that is no cost to you. So to go back to Tom's statement, when was the last time a veteran had something for free, right? So right now for 2020, and that's the reason why we are here and why I became such passionate about this program, is because we want to give back to you. We want to give back to the veterans and help them and partner with you and partner in care so we can help you live a healthier life. And it's at no cost to you. Our health is so important with every way, shape, and form, and this is the way to really start that. So please, if you do want to know more information, our table is out there, but also I'm always here. But I really just wanted to tell all of you again here, thank you for everything. Thank you for your service. I want to specifically, even personally, say 2 thank yous to veterans that are in my life that are here, and that's John Hanna and Angelo Bazzo as well. So thank you guys very much. And I just want to say thank you again, Tom, for allowing us to be able to partner. This commercial will be airing in the next few weeks on Channel 2, KDKA. That's another way that we wanted to give back to really help to get the word out there, because I can tell you this not only from a company level, but from a personal level. This is a true passion of mine, and I'm happy to be standing in front of you guys. I cannot tell you, I was so excited to be here, and can't wait to help you guys more. Thank you guys very much.
I want to introduce to you a real American hero. I first met Dave Carey when he was in his underwear. And this was a wrestling match. That's how you get weighed in, you know? And Dave and I were going to wrestle the same weight class. And I was just starting out. I didn't know nothing from nothing. But my dad was a great wrestler. And my brothers behind me were great wrestlers. But me, I was a football player. What did I know? So I'm looking at him and I'm saying, man, I got muscles on top of muscles. I eat Kippy May, you know. And this kid's no competition for me. He's a junior already. And I'm a sophomore, I think it was. And or maybe he was a senior and I was a junior, I don't remember. But he's looking at me thinking, and I'm thinking, this is a skinny redhead. There was another skinny redhead in my life, but Dan Paul's I introduced. He's gray now, but he was another skinny head. I used to throw him around like a rag doll. So I figured this guy, I'm going to throw him around like a rag doll. And Dave is probably sitting there thinking, not another one of those football players. Of course, he was a football player. But at any rate, so we go out, we get dressed, we both make weight, and you have to get down to your skivvies because it's that close. You know, there's a little scale that thing goes up and down, and every time a wrestler weighs in, it's like right in the middle. So we both just barely made weight. So we go out in the match, we shake hands, and I'm thinking, well, how am I going to get rid of this guy? And since my fan club's waiting for me, you know. So we go out, and I'm finding it a little tougher than normal. And then I have a mental freeze. I think I slipped. I fell. And I said, wow, this guy likes me. He's on top of me. And wow, look at that. There's lights on the ceiling. So turn that one. Pretty soon, the referee goes, wait a minute. Referee said, you're done. Get out of here. Oh my God. That's how I met Dave Carey. But I must have made a good impression because later that year, I don't know if Dave remembers this, there was a tournament. And I was getting better. You know, I told my nephew, my brother's kid, Tommy, when he was wrestling, I said, when you get tired of losing, then you're going to start winning. Well, I was starting to win, so because I was tired of losing. And there was a tournament. And let me tell you, when you're a wrestler, the whole gymnasium is yelling instructions at you. Your coach is yelling instructions at you. Your dad is yelling instructions at you. And guess who you hear? Nobody. You don't listen to anybody. I heard one voice, and I had to look. And there's Dave Carey on the side of the mat. He's pointing at me, and he's going like this. I said, who, me? Well, maybe he liked me now. So he gave me encouragement, and I went on and I won that match. So that was Dave Carey in high school. I don't know where he went to college. I went to West Point. I went on a football scholarship. Little known to me. he went to Navy on a football scholarship. And we both had a football career, but nothing exemplary or that we wanted. And, but we both wrestled. And there came a time when I had to work my way up. He wrestled the first team, I think, for 4 years. I had to work my way up because I had All-Americans in front of me. So we get to be, I think, he was a senior and I was a junior once again. Oh, there's Dave Carey, son of a gun. So he's wrestling at a lower weight. And he's a pretty good wrestler in college. And I weighed in at 190. We had 2 guys weigh in at 190 because we didn't have a heavyweight. So the coach decided, the way the match was going, he decided where he would put me strategically because, in all modesty, seriously, I was better than anybody on the Army team. And I was fast, and I was strong. I mean, not just modesty, seriously. I have to say it. So I go out, he puts me out against their heavyweight. And the situation was, I'm not going to say what Dave did. He wrestled my good buddy, Bob Arvin, the captain of our team. But anyhow, when we got down to my match, we were behind by 3 points. And I had to pin this guy who weighed 90 pounds more than me for us to win, to beat Navy. And when you go to Army and Navy, that's the classical, competition. You have to beat Navy or you have to beat Army. So I have to figure out how am I going to pin this guy that weighs 90 pounds more than me. Well, my first thought was, I got to keep him from getting on top of me or I'll never be able to move. So, and I, in all modesty, I was fast and strong. And somehow I beat him by 3 points. So one of the things you never want to do when you leave the academy is leave and not win against the other academy. So poor Dave had to leave, and his senior year they didn't beat Army. I'm sorry, Dave. If I could do it over again, I'd throw the match. After what you went through, I'd throw the match. But anyhow, we tied, and we were happy with that. So I graduated in '65. So in '67, I'm in Vietnam, and I come back on August 15th, and I get married. It was the first wife. And I'm on my honeymoon on August 31st or 30th. And I'm drinking cocktails in Miami Beach and having a great time. And Dave is in a F-4 Skyhawk bomber, and he's flying over North Vietnam. And he's taking flak like you wouldn't believe. And you really ought to read his book because you'll hear about it or you read about it. He's taken flak, and I don't want to take his thunder. He's going to tell you about his experiences. But he ends up being shot down. He really had to go through some maneuvering to eject from the plane because it was upside down, because he was in a roll. And but he knew what to do, and he got out of the plane, and before he knew it, he was a prisoner of war, and was there for 5.5 years. And to go through what a prisoner of war does for 5 years is something. He did this because he was serving his country. This is a real American hero. We're very honored to have Dave here. He came home, and there were 2 other POWs that he knows. One was one of my classmates who went into the Air Force, also shot down in North Vietnam, and was a POW. And a guy that went to my church in Maryland, he was the first pilot shot down in Vietnam, and he was held the longest in captivity. So I've heard some of their stories. But every time I saw those guys, I said, hey, have you heard about Dave Carey? When's he coming to town? Let me know so we can have dinner. And I told you the story earlier. I couldn't find him. For 50 years I looked for him, and finally God said, Google. So I found him, and he's here tonight. And I can't tell you, Dave, how proud we are to have you in our company. And I want you to stand with me and welcome Dave Carey.
I am delighted to be with you this evening. I am more than honored to be able to speak this evening, and I am fully in support of Veterans Angels and what Tom is doing, and I encourage you to be supportive also as he tries to help in the veteran community. I am delighted to be here. When I have the opportunity to talk about my life, I have a whole list of things in my head that I think I'm going to talk about. I think I'm going to talk about the future and how you're going to get yourself into the future. A future that's unknown and unknown. Oh yeah. You'll tell me what you're going to be doing 6 months from now, but if I get out my money clip and want to bet, all bets are off. That future is so fragile and so unknown. I think I talk about change. All the change that's going on around us, all the change that's going on in our lives, all the change that's going on in your business. I think I talk about how we exercise the influence we have. And you all have a great deal of influence. I think I talk about how we deal with our problems. I think I talk about how you handle the pressure in your life. I think I talk about how you cope with everything and try to keep it in some sort of perspective. I think, actually, when I start to think about what am I talking about, this list in my head gets to be longer and longer and longer. And I want to talk about all those things tonight by means of an analogy. An analogy is, there's no free dinner here. This is a test. An analogy is a comparison. I want to tell you a story this evening. The inference is we can make some sort of connection. The story tell you, and that whole list of things I started on. Now I know from experience that I can make a few connections. And believe me, if I can think quickly enough, I'm going to try to make a connection. More interesting to me, I've discovered over time that you can make lots more connections than I can make. So I would like for you to hang in there for a little while this evening after dinner with this question burning uppermost in your mind. So what? So what do I care what that guy says? Why would I even listen to that guy? So what? I'd like for you to be doing real-time integration. Now, the analogy goes like this. I imagine from looking at us that everybody in this room has probably had at least one, and for many of us more than one, occasion in your life where something happened that had so much impact on you, that was so emotionally charged up, it was so huge in your experience, that if I asked you to think about it tonight, you'd be like it happened this morning. I mean, on a rare occasion, something will happen to us that is so significant, that we so charged up, that we just carry it around with us sort of right here in the front of our head somewhere. For me, one of those things happened on the 31st of August, 1967. I don't want to know how long ago that was. I don't want to know how old some of you were. I don't want to know that some of you were not. See, I know this is like ancient history here. You kind of have to work with me a little bit. But I'll tell you what, the 31st of August, 1967 stands out in my mind as though etched in crystal. I can look at every detail of it. I can run forward, backward, fast, I can stop action. The 31st of August, 1967, I was a somewhat younger naval aviator. I was flying an A-4 aircraft off the aircraft carrier Riscany. We were in the Gulf of Tonkin, about 60 miles from the coast of North Vietnam. The 31st of August, 1967, in the Gulf of Tonkin was one of those gray, hazy days at sea. It was the kind of day where you stand up on the flight deck and look out. There's no horizon out there. Everything's the same color. It kind of goes from over your head down to your feet. We manned airplanes about 7 o'clock in the morning, launched 18 of them from the ship, rendezvoused overhead, got ourselves organized, pointed the noses toward the coast of North Vietnam. The target that day was a small railroad bridge just inland from the port city of Haiphong. We crossed the beach, they started shooting. They always started shooting. That day, among all the other things, I remember very clearly, they fired in succession from way out in front of us 2 surface-to-air missiles. Now, back in the day, a surface-to-air missile was about the size of a telephone pole. And when they'd launch it, there'd be so much dust and smoke kicked up. Just from getting them off the rails, they could see them firing from miles away. And once they had them in the sky, the plume of flame on the booster rocket was so big and so bright, you just tracked them as they went through the sky. So I sat in my cockpit that day and I watched the first missile. And it's a little bitty point of light sitting on my windshield. And it just sits there, and it's getting bigger and brighter and bigger and brighter and bigger, till finally it started to move on the windshield. And I knew when it started to move on the windshield that it would or would not hit me. What do you think? Would. Other ideas? Would not? Would? Well, it wasn't going to hit me. I mean, wood was a good guess, but it was wrong. It was, so this thing starts to move. It's like a relative motion problem. It's like when you're out there trying to get on a freeway. As long as those cars all move relative to each other, there's no problem. It's when there's no relative movement. So that thing started to move. I turned my attention to the second missile. It just sat there. There's a little point of light getting bigger and brighter and bigger and brighter and bigger. Till finally I decided if it wouldn't move, I wouldn't. And that day, I had a brilliant idea. You've probably had ideas like this. They sort of come to us in a flash. What I decided I was going to do that day, rather than go left through 16 airplanes around here somewhere beside me, I decided to just roll this thing up on its back, go across the top of the only airplane on the right side, and come down the outside and press onto the target. It was a brilliant idea at the time until I was upside down over this airplane beside me. The missile went right between us. There was a huge explosion. Fireball blew the tail section off my airplane. The airplane just stayed on its back, started spinning and tumbling and gyrating, falling through the sky. It was shaking so bad nothing would focus. When I tried to look at the instrument panel, see what was going on, it was just a blur in the cockpit. The stick was real loose. It was like not connected to anything. Both rudder pedals up against the firewall. This thing is wallowing and tumbling. I had all the flying characteristics of a brick. I mean, this thing is coming through the sky like a tunnel lead, and I'll tell you this, every time the nose of the airplane go by the water, and for me, that water meant safety. It seemed like it would hesitate. And I'd think to myself, this thing is going to fly. And I'd start stirring on that stick and kicking the pedals, the nose would whip off. Going through 4,000 feet, I got a good bit of my altimeter, ejected from the airplane, had a parachute, landed in the middle of a small North Vietnamese village. Now, when I first landed, there was nobody around. They were wherever they went for air raids, so I get rid of my helmet, my parachute, I ducked out between the hooches, and I started running out across the rice paddy. And as I'm running out across the rice paddy, and running is probably not the right word for what you do in a rice paddy. You know, the mud's about this thick up there, and I'm slugging my way through it, and I'm watching those airplanes flying away. And I get to about the middle of the rice paddy, and I can see that one of those airplanes is turning around, and he's going to come back. So I stopped right there. I started digging around in my gear, and I dug out a little radio that we carried. Now, this little radio, I had had this little radio in my hands a lot. It was about the size of 2 or 3 of your cell phones stacked together, and I'd had it in my hands a lot. On the ship, we used to play with them sometimes. The Navy make us get them out and check the batteries. The point is, I've had this radio in my hands a lot. But now I'm standing out in the middle of the rice paddy. I'm mud up to the middle of my calves. I'm watching the airplanes coming right straight at me. I have this little radio. For the life of me, I couldn't get that radio turned on. It was like I had all thumbs on both of my hands. I'm watching him, and he's getting closer, and I'm trying to get this doggone thing to work. And by the way, it's not complicated. It only had like 2 little switches on it, but I can't get him in the right sequence. And he's getting closer until finally, by blind luck, I promise you, about the time he boomed across the top, I managed to mash down on the right combination of buttons on that little radio, and it sparked to life. Which allowed me to say, in my very finest airline pilot drawl, and I started babbling in that radio, and my voice was up about 3 octaves, and it was just all gooshing out of me. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, this does not sound good. But there was nothing I could do about it. I just babbled on that radio, went on and on. And by the way, I had been trained that it would have been better for me to die than to not sound good on the radios. I mean, this is serious pilot stuff that's going on here. But there was I babbled. The best thing that happened was I ran myself out of breath. And when I ran myself out of breath, I paused to inhale. And when I paused to inhale, I let off one of those buttons on that radio, which allowed Dean then to get a word in edgewise. And he said, you know we cannot come and get you. At which point I couldn't think of anything clever to say, and Dean said, I'll see you when this is over. And he flew away. And I stood out there in Mount Rice Paddy. I don't know how to describe it to you. It was like I was the only person in the entire universe. It was me out there all alone by myself. It was, and I don't think I've described that to you too much. Because I'm willing to bet money that we've all had some time in our life when you get that alone feeling. I mean, stuff happens. Sometimes you got to make a decision. Sometimes you got to stand up and be counted. Sometimes you get the feeling like there's nobody, just you, all by yourself, all alone. Well, I wasn't alone for very long, of course. The next thing that happened was I was immediately surrounded by about 1 million North Vietnamese. That's exaggeration. 840,000. I don't know where they came from. They captured me so fast they'd make your head swim. They drug me up that rice paddy and they proceeded to tie me up with miles and miles of rope. They had so much rope wrapped around me. There was rope everywhere. And then after they had me all tied up with this rope, then they decided they wanted to undress me. And they didn't untie me, but rather they took a big machete made out of the leaf spring of a car, and they would reach in between the rope and grab handfuls of my gear and just chop it away. And I had all my flight gear. You know what that looks like? How many of you remember seeing Top Gun? Come on, it's un-American to not see Top Gun. Okay, you remember in the movie when Goose and Tom Cruise are walking across the tarmac and they're carrying the helmets? They have on G-suits, torso harness, all that stuff. That's the way I looked. I was way better looking than Tom Cruise. It was a few years ago. They chopped it away to end up being me, my undershorts, and my miles and miles of rope. And that started for me what would turn out to be 5.5 years in prison in North Vietnam. The question I'm most frequently asked about that is this: how did you do that? How could you do that? How were you able to do that? And that's the question I want to talk with you about for a while this evening. How did we do that? Actually, I'd like for you to think about that question. How did we do that? Here, I'll set the scene for you. I was kept locked up for years in cells that were never quite big enough for the number of people in them. On average, I probably lived with about 6 or 5 other guys. I've been by myself for several months. I lived with a group of 20 men for 1.5 years one time. But on average, there were probably 5 or 6 of us in one of these cells. And a lot of them were cells, too. They were in dungeon-like prisons that the French had built over there in the early 1900s. The kind of things you see in the movies where they have big eye walls, little air slits up there. We slept on just concrete floors or on pallets made out of wood or concrete. Some of the pallets had shackles on them, so if they wanted to, they could put you up on the pallet, put your ankles across the bar, padlock you down. I weigh about 200 pounds now. At the time, I got down to about 125 pounds. We were interrogated on occasion. We were beaten on rare occasion. We were tortured on very, very, very rare occasion. We were not allowed to see or have any contact with any Americans outside of our cell. They wanted us to be isolated and cut off, cell by cell by cell. They believed it, divide and conquer. And that's the way they were trying to run this thing. We have how many of you can picture what I'm trying to describe? You've seen enough movies, you can picture this, groups of Americans locked up in these cells. Well, I said the question I most frequently ask is, how did you do that? How were you able to do that? And I want to tell you tonight that in my mind, the answer to that question is very, very simple. How did we do that? We did what we had to do. We did our best. We grew through that experience. We kept our sense of humor, and we kept the faith. Faith in ourselves, faith in each other, faith in this country, faith in God. See, and I see that as directly translatable in your lives. I mean, how are you going to get yourself into the future? How do you deal with all the change that's going on? How do you cope with the pressure in your life? How do you exercise the influence you have? How do you do what you have to do? You do your best. You grow it. You keep your sense of humor. You keep the faith. But wait, before I press you too hard, I give you some answers. How did we do it? How did we do it? Well, the very first thing we decided we had to do, how we do this, was to be able to communicate amongst these cells. It was like, I'd like to be able to tell you it's because we were so smart. But You probably wouldn't believe that, and I don't believe it at all. It'd be a very hard sell. Somehow, instinctively, we knew we could not allow ourselves to be cut off and isolated in these cells. And so we said, actually, we can think about that here this evening for a few minutes. You have the picture in your head, groups of Americans locked up in these cells. Just picture a bunch of us locked up in a bunch of these hotel rooms. We decided we have got to be in touch with people. We can't be isolated. Now, there are many parts of the problem. The first part of the problem is whatever we decide to do had better be very, very sneaky, because if they catch us doing this, they're going to beat us. So what we decided we could do that would be very, very sneaky would be to go over there and tap very quietly on that wall. That'd be sneaky. Next part of the problem is this. We must now think of something that we can go over there and tap very quietly on that wall. So if we get the right answer, we would know immediately that's American. Hey, it may not be Americans over there. Could be Thai, Ocean, Arctic. Could be our captors sneaking around trying to catch us doing these things so they can come beat on us for a while. So we need to think of something that we can tap quietly on that wall, so if we get the right answer, we know. What does that sound like? Morse code. Well, Morse code presented a problem for us. I knew Morse code, of course. I used to take tests on Morse code. And I know telegraphers can do the dot dash thing with the little key, but us thumping on this wall, we were never quite able to figure out how to thump dots and dashes. You worked on that for a while. Other ideas? What does it sound like? It sounds like dot, 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 dot. I can tell you this, if there's an American within 100 miles, they go dot, dot. If you've been in this country longer than 6 months, you go, I don't know why that is. See, I used to think that was because of Burma shave. Now I find out there are people don't know what Burma shave was anymore. I now believe it's because we all of us wasted hours of our lives watching cartoons. And they end with that little dot, 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 dot thing. Now, I'll tell you, you have to remember that my experience in Hanoi is through a keyhole in the prison. But they couldn't replicate that rhythm. Well, they knew what we were doing. They beat it out of us. But when they come around and try to tap us up on the wall to get us in trouble, it never sounded like dot, 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 dot when they did it. It'd be different. It'd be like dot, 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 dot. It was, they didn't have Looney Tunes in that country. Okay, so we go over the wall, we tap very quietly, dot, 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 dot. We get the answer, dot, dot. We know. What would you have done next? Can you picture yourself up against that wall? What would you do? It's okay, we have a lot of time. He's there, do it again. Dot, 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 dot. He's there, he's there. Picture yourself on the other side of the wall. I start. It goes like this. 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll go all the way to 26 and I'll stop. And I'll start again. 1, 1, 2, 1. So we're going to start with 1 for the letter A, 2 for the letter B, 3 for the letter. Hey, this has to be very simple. Some of these guys are in the Marine Corps. Some are even in the Air Force, if you can picture this whole thing. So we start. 1 for the letter A, 2 for, I can't tell you how old it gets. Tap 15 times on the wall to go find the letter O in our alphabet. And not only that, in our alphabet, all the good letters are down there towards the end sometimes. So the next thing we did was, picture this in your mind, we built a 5x5 matrix into which we put the letters of the alphabet. Now you know that I have 25 squares and 26 letters to deal with. So we use the letter C for the letter K, everything will fit. Now I could tap a number across the top, a number down the side, locate the letter in the matrix. We'd go fast. That code was so good. It was so good, it's probably why we didn't bother to try to figure out how to do Morse code, because we had this thing, it worked so well. We'd go about 30 words a minute. We were the original text messengers. That code was so good, we use it for everything. Hey, if they take you outside and give you the bamboo room and tell you to sweep down the walkway in between the buildings, you could sweep in the code. See, it sounded like this. It was like being on the radio. Everybody listened. The whole world was out. You could tell jokes, whatever you wanted to do. They were waiting. And then if they took us out and did not give us a bamboo room, we did it with body noises. Not the kind of body noises some of you are thinking about. But it sounded like and we'd cough and hack and sputter and spit. You get a punchline to your joke. How do we do it? The first thing we did, always, was worked out this whole communications process. And I want to tell you tonight that I think the analogy between this story I want to tell you and your work in your lives is very, very good. This is super good. See, here we are. We're locked up in these cells. They want us to be cut off, isolated, out of touch with each other. Here you are, in the places where you live and work. Now, there's no plan to cut you off, isolate you, get you out of... But I know when I start asking a question like this, hey, how easy is it for you to start to feel like somehow you're getting disconnected from the people around you? How easy is it for you to start to feel like somehow you're losing that connection with the people you work for, the people who work for you? Hey, some of you are here from huge organizations. How easy is it for you to feel like you're hunkered down in a little... It is so easy, and it's so easy for us to get disconnected or feel out of touch. Oh, or I get real personal too, let's go home. How easy is it for us to lose that kind of connection with spouses, with children, with people that are important in our lives? It is so easy for us to start to feel disconnected and out of touch. Why should we be concerned about that where we were? Well, for starters, if we're going to do anything on any kind of scale larger than a few people locked up in one of these cells, we've got to be able to communicate. If we're going to get organized, take care of each other, figure out who's in charge here, what are we supposed to be doing, how do we, anything, we have to be able to communicate. Why should you be concerned about that? I think the answers are exactly the same. They're precisely the same. How difficult was that process where we were? It was hard. It was... I used to have a callus on my knuckles about 3/8 of an inch deep from tapping on that wall. And some days, if they want to mess with us, they'd come around and make us hold out our hands. If you had calluses on your knuckles, you get knocked around a little bit. Now, I thought that'd be okay on a rare occasion rather than every day lay on that filthy floor trying to look under that door for guards. Because if I'm up here tapping on this wall and none of my cellmates goofing off, we are in this together and we are taking care of each other. And they've got their eyes and ears pressed to the cracks in these shutters. They're laying on these filthy floors for hours trying to listen for footsteps. It was just very difficult. How difficult is that process where you are? Well, you know, some people want to argue that the root cause of all of our problems is some sort of break in the communications process. Now, I don't go quite that far, but I do know if I ask a question like this, how many of you in this room tonight think that you can say something and that's the way it'll be? See, you know better than that. We say stuff till we're blue in the face. Worse yet, nowadays, of course, we send emails, we leave text messages out there, we leave voicemails. People are out there, they're deleting this stuff, they're swearing the system doesn't work right. It's just a very difficult process. So I think the analogy is pretty good between the story I want to tell and your lives and your work. How do we do it? The first thing we did was work out the communications process. I commend that to your thinking. I don't know you. I don't know how it is with you. I'm going to tell you what I know. What I know is if the communications process is not working well anywhere in your life, I know who has to fix it. You do. And if you don't fix it, it's not going to get fixed. You can quit belly aching about it. You have to do it. You have to do it. If it's not working anywhere in your life, you have to fix it. How do we do it? First thing we did was work out the communications process. Second thing we did, exactly the way you would have done if you had been there, was we worked on the entertainment schedule. Now, you don't want to think too far out. These are just a bunch of guys locked up in these cells. See, here's the way we used to do that. We used to have cell meetings. We always had 100% attendance in our meetings. At those meetings, we would talk about movie stars, books, authors. It would be enough for you to let slip that the last book you had read was Hunger Games. We schedule you to tell us Hunger Games. Hey, we can do it whenever. Next week, next month, 6 months from now, next year. We're into long-range planning in this place. So the process would be, talk to all your cellmates, find out who read Hunger Games, who saw Hunger Games, who knew anything about Hunger Games, go tap a message on the wall. Eventually, you knew everything anybody knew about Hunger Games. You could sit in the corner for however long you wanted, fill in the blank spots in the story. The appointed night would come, we'd flop on the country, and you'd tell us a story. I received an Academy Award. It was for Dr. Shabbat. After I'd been there for years and moved from cell to cell and prison to prison, I moved in with this group of 20 men I mentioned. My reputation preceded me. They wanted to know, when can you tell us Shabbat? Anytime. So we scheduled it for what back then was Sunday night at the movies. I had 3 minutes sitting over here. When I would nod my head, they would start out with Laura's theme. So, I told Shabbat in the first person. I was Alec Guinness, the brother out there searching for the lost daughter. I don't know if any of you remember that story. It took me 5 hours. At the end of which, there was a spontaneous standing ovation. They give me the Oscar right there on the spot. How did we do it? We did what we had to do. We did our best. We did it day after 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 day. We decided we were going to grow through that experience. We were going to learn something. We were going to come out smarter than we went in. We were not going to vegetate, and so we began to teach each other everything we'd ever learned. And quite a few things we'd never learned. I learned to play the piano when I was in prison. Other than the fellow who had taken piano lessons as a child, we decided I should learn to play. So we took toilet paper, we glued it all together with rice, we took ashes and dirt, we drew a keyboard on it. John taught me how to read the keyboard, he taught me how to read music, he taught me all the finger exercises that go along with playing the piano. I used to practice faithfully. And on Sundays, I would give concerts. So I'd take my piano, I'd spread on my end of that. I played the most beautiful music in the world, and I have most certainly played with more enthusiasm than anyone's ever played. My roommates, they loved it, of course. Well, if they didn't like what I was playing, they could listen to something else. You know, in the intervening years, I have seated myself in front of a real piano. I don't know what was wrong with that piano. It wasn't like in my head. In my head, it's perfect. I know how to play the piano. I can read music. I understand it all. I cannot get it out the ends of my fingers. And actually, I find a lot of things to be like that. Maybe you do too. You ever notice how perfect stuff is in your head, and then of course you have to get it's all downhill run. Everything's up here. Well, for example, this communications thing I was talking about. How perfect is it in your head? You know what you're trying to say, why you're thinking about it, what your motivation is, everything, and then you have to get it out, and there are lots of examples. I have children. How many of you have children, raised children? I raised 2 children. In my mind, I knew how to raise perfect children. I had no idea what was going on at home. Things are just like that. They're perfect up here, and then, speaking of perfect, I'm going to tell you the perfect example. I told you, when I stood up here tonight, I was delighted to be here. Now, it's very difficult for me to explain that to you, how excited I am to be here in this room with you tonight. Because you see, tonight, in this little wee bitty period of time, I'm going to have an opportunity to have a positive impact in your life. I've been thinking about this in the shower this morning, flying in yesterday. I've been going over lines, I'm adding lines in, I'm throwing lines out, I'm trying to get my act together. And I want you to, hey, I'm trying to shrink down 5.5 years of my life into something we can talk about for a few minutes. Touch on the so what question. And I want you to know this. no matter what happens in here tonight, in the shower this morning, it was perfect. They're just that way, they're perfect. It wouldn't have been enough over there if you let slip you'd taken a biology course. We make you the biology professor. Same process as the movies, really. Talk to everybody, find out what they do about leaves, twigs, bugs, worms. You go sit in the corner, eventually you're teaching a biology course. I was the French professor. The way that happened was this: they came in one day and they took two of us out and they split us up and they began to beat on us. And they wanted to know, they accused us of talking about things we were not allowed to talk about. Well, 6 weeks later, when they dumped the two of us back in the cell, the roommates want to know, what's going on? What's going on? We said, you won't believe this. They don't understand English very well. We're getting pounded for what they think we're saying. So we came to the only logical conclusion, which was we would quit speaking English. What we decided to speak was French. I didn't teach the French course yet. What we decided to speak was Piglet. Yes! We set aside a whole evening to review the rules for the grammatical construction of Piglet. That takes 1 minute. The next morning, crack of dawn, we started speaking nothing but Piglet. I don't know if you've ever spoken nothing but Piglet. I can tell you how long you can speak nothing but Piglet before you go start raving mad. It takes about 4 hours. In the middle of all that, I let slip that I had taken French at Tuesday High School, Tuesday Naval Academy. My roommates who were going crazy trying to speak Piglet, he said we should immediately shift to French. Yeah, it didn't matter, mind you, I didn't learn anything in those 4 years. So I had a quick note, tap a message on the wall saying, now the French professor who knows French words, and I began to teach French. I taught French for years. By the time we came back to the United States, I had 6 men absolutely fluent in the French language. According to me. Hey, there are some problems with that language. I had to make some stuff up. But you should have heard them speak it. How do we do it? We did what we had to do. We did our best. We decided we were going to grow through that experience. We re-remembered and memorized everything. I'm completely convinced that everything you have ever been exposed to is recorded. The only question is you going to get it. It's all up there. You're putting it in. It was important to us. For example, to be able to name in chronological order every teacher you ever had in your life. Or come up with the name of every student in your 5th grade homeroom. Everything is in your heads. You'd be amazed what you have. For example, when they first captured me, they took me to Hanoi, and they began to beat on me. And they wanted to know some things. And I wanted to tell them my name, rank, serial number, date of birth. Well, they really wanted to know things. And the beatings led the interrogations led to beatings, and the beatings led to torture. They really wanted to know. And we got to the point where I hurt so bad, the pain was so great, that I knew if this kept up, I was going to go crazy. And I didn't want to go crazy, because even as a junior officer, I had my little bitty share of military secrets, and I thought, if I'm crazy, there's no telling what I'll say here. So what I decided I was going to do was hold out to the last possible second and lie. And that's what happened. And hey, and I'd like to be able to tell you it took weeks. Weeks. I don't know how long it took. I lose a little track of time in there. But I was so desperate. I hurt so bad. I started lying. I lied about everything you can possibly imagine. I lied. And the interrogators, of course, they keep track of everything. How many of you have experience with interrogators? Well, never mind. I'll teach you some stuff about interrogators. Actually, I wouldn't be so quick to answer that question. How many of you have bosses or had bosses? Right? How many of us have spouses? This will not be totally unfamiliar stuff. Okay, I'm lying about everything. The interrogators are keeping track of everything. Then finally, they got done with me and they left. Now, I don't know how to describe it to you. I don't know how to tell you about how I hurt. The pain was I couldn't get up off the floor anymore. My arms didn't work. My arms didn't work for weeks. I ate by just wiggling around my stomach, sticking my face in a bowl of rice. The pain was absolutely incredible, but worse than the pain was in my head. It's the only time that I've ever been like this in my life where I could not pick a subject and think about it. It was though I didn't have any control anymore. My mind is thinking like crazy stuff flashing around in my head, like the dog I had when I was a kid, or my home in Geneva, the first car I bought, just out of control things. And what I wanted to think about was all the lies I had told, because I knew they'd be back. But I couldn't get a grip on it. It was totally out of control. Into my mind came the first line of the 23rd Psalm. And that line kept coming into my mind. And I didn't want to think about it either, but I discovered by hit or by miss that if I would think about that line, the Lord is my shepherd, I could think about that line. Well, my mama didn't raise any dummies. I started thinking about that line. Now, I had learned the 23rd Psalm when I was a little bitty guy in Sunday school, and over the years I had been adrift. I had been so adrift. I'm ashamed to stand here tonight and tell you that at that point in my life, it had been years and years and years and years since I thought of the 23rd Psalm. But that line was there, and I could think about that line. I worked on it for days and days until from somewhere in the back of my head, I dredged up the whole 23rd Psalm. I discovered once I had done that, I had control of my mind back. Now, I most certainly don't think that was any accident. And there was the Word of God planted in my mind so that when I would be so desperate, it would be there. You know, Scripture tells us over and over and over again that God is faithful. Not you, not me. God is faithful. And there it was. And the point of it is, it's all in your head. You're putting it in all the time. You put it in day after day. You'd be totally amazed what you have in your head. You'd be totally astounded what you could remember if I took you out there across that hall and locked you up in that bathroom for a year. You'd be amazed what's in your head. It's all there. It's all, and by the way, that answers a lot of questions, like why should we be concerned about the music that our children or our grandchildren listen to, or maybe some of us listen? I'll tell you why. Because it's going in. And what's going in is getting stored. And what's going to get stored is going to flavor character and life. There's no way around it. Why should we be concerned about what's being watched on all these screens? I'll tell you why. Because it's going in and it's getting stored. What's the problem with pornography? I'll tell you the problem. It's going in and it's getting stored. And it's going to flavor character and life. There's no way around it. Everything is up there. We put it in all the time, day after day after day. We had a fellow who lived with us, who when he was a child, his parents used to insist that every year that he had to memorize a poem which he would then recite at the annual family Thanksgiving dinner. He hated it, of course, but now years later, Norm was able to recall great quantities of poetry. And so we get a message come through the wall saying, Norman is working on the highwayman. He's stuck on the line that comes after, plaiting a dark red love knot into her long black hair. Who can help? We love to get those messages. We could argue for days. We could discuss for days whether anybody ever read the highwayman, knew the highwayman, heard of the highwayman, and then we just make up lines and send them back to Norm. And he was working hard over there. We wanted to help. Eventually, through the wall, a line at a time would come the highwayman, and we'd memorize it as it came. We had huge quantities of material memorized. Some of the things we memorized for the beauty of the words. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there's been some mistake. The only other sounds of easy sweep and downy flake. The winds are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep. Miles to go before I sleep. Miles to go before I sleep. Some of the things we memorized for the sound of the words. You may talk of gin and beer, and you quoted Separio, and sent the penny fighter over shutting. But when it's time for slaughter, you do your work on water, and lick the bloomin' boots of him what's got it. Down into sunny clime where I used to spend my time in the service of Her Majesty the Queen, of all our black-faced crew, the finest man I knew was the regimental beastie, young Gadine. Some of the things we memorized had great significance for us personally. Maybe the way things go some days, they would have significance for you personally. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve their term long after they are gone, so go on when there is nothing in you except the will to hang on. In the felt clutch of circumstance, I have not whined or cried aloud. Under the bludgeoning of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. You are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. You anoint my head with oil. Truly goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I suppose it was natural, since we were so enamored with those kinds of things, that we would try to write some poetry ourselves. I wrote a poem in French. Do any of you speak French? We skipped that. I have a good friend. I remember when he wrote his first poem. It was after the first meal of the day. Jerry took a bite out of hunk of bread. He looked down and started his first poem. Went like this: "Little weevil in my bread, I think I just bit off your head." It went kind of downhill from there, but it kind of started. How did we do? We laughed a lot. See, laughter was kind of part of our coping mechanism. It's the way we tried to deal with the pressure in our lives. It was the way we tried to keep things in some sort of balance. So I wonder how you do that in your life. I wonder how you cope with all the pressure in your life. I wonder how you keep things in some sort of balance. I wonder how you deal with it all. I'll tell you something else I learned in prison. I know clearly, unequivocally, beyond a shadow of any doubt, who's responsible for the coping and balance in your life. You are. And if you don't take care of it, your life is going to get whacked out. It's so easy for us to mess up our lives. It'd be easy. How easy do you think it'd be to worry yourself into some sort of an ulcer? Pretty easy, I think. How easy is it for us to ruin relationships that are important to us? Pretty easy, I think. See, somehow we've got to keep things in perspective, cope with it all, keep it. Our coping mechanism largely was laughter. We had a fellow who went to interrogation. The interrogator wanted to know, in your country, where does your family live? He told him, Kansas. So what do your family do? They're farmers. So what do your farmer family grow? He said, they grow up dog. So later on that day, the interrogator takes him back to his cell, and he comes over to our cell. The little spider opens up, bang! And there stands the elf. We have names for these people. And the elf wants to know, what's up, Doc? He says, what's up, Doc? And he keeps saying it over and over again. What's up, Doc? What's up, Doc? What's up? It doesn't make a lick of sense. He wants to know what's up. And then he starts to get excited. And the next thing you know, he's got his head jammed in that little hole. He's spitting all over himself. See, you could identify a lot more closely now with interrogators, bosses, spouses. It's not good for these people to get excited. He wants to know what's up, Doc. You see him? Finally he says, up, Doc! You don't run on a farm in Kansas! Oh, up, Doc! About this high. We taught him everything there is to know about Up Doc. We give him the recipe for Up Doc bread. Whatever he wanted to know, we're teaching. We laughed a lot. We had a fellow who had a cockroach, and he had built a chariot for his cockroach. He was worried that someday we were going to announce that we wanted to have cockroach chariot races. So every day he would take his cockroach out, put the chariot on it, and run it around in the center of his loop in the center of his cell. He's training his entry. You know, if we're going to have races, you want to be ready to go. One day during a training session, the inevitable happened. The cockroach got out of the loop, under the door, and was gone. Now, picture yourself on the other side of the wall. The message that comes tapping through says, Have you seen a cockroach pulling a chariot? How do we do it? We did what we had to do. We did our best. We did it day after day after day after day. We grew through that experience. We kept our sense of humor. And we kept the faith. Faith in ourselves, our ability to endure. Faith in ourselves, to be able to gut it out. Faith. See, tomorrow's coming, and I'm going to be there. Faith in ourselves no matter what. See, I see that, by the way, as directly translatable into your lives. Faith in ourselves no matter what. Faith in ourselves to be able to stand on our feet. Faith in ourselves to be able to make decisions we have to make. Faith in ourselves faith in ourselves. We did it through faith in each other. I've lived with men who have fainted hold my life in their hands. They held the next best thing to it, and I knew that they would do the best that they could do. And when the situation was reversed, they granted that to me, that I would do the best that I could do. And it's that kind of faith and confidence and trust in each other that allows us to live together, work together, be together effectively. It's all built on this foundation of trust and confidence. I did it through faith in that country. We did it through faith in this country. We live in the greatest nation that has ever existed on the face of the earth. This is a land of freedom. This is a land of achievement. This is a land of opportunity. This is a land kicking the doors down trying to get in. This is the land. The problem is, you and I are buried in what's wrong with this country. We are completely inundated with what's wrong with this country. It's all out of proportion. It's all out of whack. Hey, if you go home and watch the late night news tonight, how much do you see about what's wrong with our country? And what, if anything, will you see about what's right with this country? And it's all out of whack. And it's all out of proportion. And nobody's going to do that balancing act for us either. I did it through faith in God. I'm never alone over there. I've lived with men who profess to be atheist and agnostic. I believe it's more difficult for them. I don't think that was any accident. The truth of the matter is this. You and I have been blessed. That's it. I mean, how do you account for it? How do you account for all that you have and all that you enjoy? How do you account for you being here in this land, in this? How do you figure all that? There's no figure. Why are you not a Syrian refugee? Why are you not starving in Darfur? There's no figure. We've just been blessed. We've been blessed. And I know as clearly as I'm standing right here that I don't deserve it. I've just been blessed. And I don't know you, but I've been watching you for about 45 minutes now. And I have decided. Nope, you don't deserve it either. How do we do? We did what we had to do. We did our best. We did it day in and day out. We grew through that situation. We kept our sense of humor, and we kept the faith. What can we learn from my experience? All of my experience teaches me that no matter what happens to us in our lives, we've been given the ability to choose how we're going to live that, how we're going to deal with it. And I know there are about 100 veterans in here, but I'm telling you, I believe that. No matter what happens to us in our lives, we've been given the ability to choose how we're going to do it. See, my questions would sound better if I asked them like this. How will you choose to get yourself into the future? How will you choose to deal with your problems? How will you choose to deal with all the change that's going on around you? How do you choose to exercise the influence you have? How do you choose? All of my experience teaches me that we've been given the ability to choose. That doesn't mean it's easy. That doesn't mean we can do it by ourselves. Hence we have Veterans Angels. But all my experience teaches me we've been given the ability to choose. In the first line of The Tale of Two Cities, Charles Dickens wrote, "It was the best of all times and the worst of all times." And he's absolutely right. This is the best of all times. It's the best of all times for who you are, for you to be who you are, living where you're living around here, doing what you're doing, having your background. It is the best of all times. And oh, by the way, this is the worst of all possible times. For you to be who you are, living around here, doing what you're doing, having experience, it's all, and which it is entirely up to us. It's, let me be perfectly clear. Which it is entirely up to you. It's entirely up to you. If you need help, you need to get help. We have offers here. It's entirely up to you. Our life is nothing more than an accumulation of the choices we make. So, as we wrap up here, as you go back to your lives, as we move forward into the future, I would urge you to choose always to make it the best of all times. The best of all times. Thank you very much. God bless.
Dave wrote a book, The Ways We Choose. I read it several months ago on Kindle, and he's going to have some over here by the side of the stage. And if you want one, you can have him autograph it. Dave, I need you to come back up just for a second. You saw a display on the back table. Not yet, guys. We got a couple things. A friend of mine, is that upside down? A friend of mine, Jerry Burgess, has a company that makes these. Army, Air Force, Navy, clocks, and Marines. And there's a display in the back, and he would be glad to take orders for them. But this one, Dave, just happens to be for you. And it's inscribed on the back. I'm being attacked by the commissioners. I must have double parked or something. I don't know. What did I do wrong?
Mr. Abraham, we just want to say thank you so much for letting us be a part of this event tonight. We look forward to continuing growing and being involved in the future. And to everyone in this room, I just want to say thank you very much to all the veterans. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'll take the lead from Father and say a simple thank you is the first thing I can think of when I see all your faces. Thank you so much. God bless.
This is a proclamation from the commissioners of Westmoreland County, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically it says at the bottom line, it says, we the commissioners of Westmoreland County do hereby offer our support to veteran angels, so no warrior is left behind. Thank you, Tom, for everything that you do. Thanks for everybody for showing up tonight. Let's keep this thing going. This is phenomenal. The work
Father John. I want Father John to leave you with a message, particularly our veterans. And by the way, I do appreciate this, Chuck and Gina. And your coming here is taken as support for our veterans, as it should be, and not necessarily because for me. So we appreciate that on behalf of the veterans. Father?
So that was a knock, and a knock deserves a reply. The knock comes from God, and it says, as we heard a little bit ago, so what? And that's where an evening like this is either a so what that is followed by of some sort, or it's not. So when we hear, what we want to do is look and see what our means. You know, Tom has given us a wonderful opportunity to, in this case, specifically be of service to our veterans, to those who have risked their lives for us and for the freedom that we enjoy. And so it is on us to hear and to respond in whatever way we would respond, which could be as simple as bringing the veterans more consciously into our prayers, holding them before God. It could be that we look at the website, that we talk to our friends about it, that we talk to Tom, that we take some action, so that when we hear there's not some kind of silence. So may God grant that we all take these things to heart and
Okay, thank you, Claude. Claire, you want to do it? General Gill is going to retire the colors. Thank you all for coming. We greatly appreciate it. I hope we lived up to your expectations, and we hope to see you again.
This is a privilege we only give to generals because it's very simple. Color guard.
Put it over. Hey, put! Horses, close to go.
Thank you very much for coming. That's it.
You packed your bags and shut the door. You crossed the sea to fight a war. You didn't know just what would happen to ya. Stepped in the dirt, boots on the ground, and gunfire was the only